Got about 3 more seconds for somebody to volunteer before it's voluntold time. 2, 1, 0. Okay. How about, okay, Zamari saved y'all because I was about to ask somebody. Zamari, explain to me what a feature is.
A feature is like a topic or a fact or something.
Yeah, if we're talking about ELA class, but in terms of science, what is a feature that we talked about? We talked about this last week. Julia, how about you help her out? Tia Henley.
A feature is a distinctive attribute or aspect of something.
Okay, so can you give me an example of a human feature?
Like one person to have long hair and the other to have short.
Is that a feature or is that a trait?
I mean, like everybody has a hand or nails.
Exactly, right? So a feature is something that makes you a part of, like, human, right? So if you have hair, that is a feature. If you have a face, that is a feature. If you have arms, if you have hands, that is a feature, correct? Whereas traits are the type or the way you describe it, right? So please explain to me what traits are.
Traits are like people.
Whoa, you going out? Let's try it again. Clear, good. You like mic went out. Hello. No, your mic went out. We couldn't hear you.
I said a trait can be like when somebody has blue eyes or somebody has green eyes and somebody can have short hair and long hair.
Exactly, right? So that's what a trait is. It describes the type of features that you have, right? So if your features are your eye, or if your feature is your eyes, the traits are I have brown eyes, or I have light eyes, or I have blue eyes, or gray eyes. That is the trait that you have. Okay? Great job. So is everybody clear on the difference between trait and feature? You good? So can I have, how about, Nasim, can you give me an example of a feature? Nasim. Nasim, you there, buddy? You're muted, sir. Yeah, Clea, we heard you. I want to make sure that everybody else understands what's going on, okay? So Nasim, it's going to be hard for me to give you participation points if you're not participating, all right, sir? How about Deshaun? Deshaun, can you give me an example of what a feature is? We just talked about features and traits. Can you tell me what a feature is?
Like can you come back to me?
Okay. Can I have one more person before we can move on? Tell me what a feature is. All right, so we just talked about it.
A feature is something that both people have.
Mm-hmm. That all people have, right? So an example of a feature, like we talked about, was if someone has hair. Another example was what? What's another type of example of a feature? If we all have them, what is the example that we all have?
Hands.
Yep, hand is an example of a feature, right? So we're gonna move on, but we need to make sure that we really understand between feature and trait, okay? All right, so, oh, this is not supposed to pop. All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit about heredity, right? So we talked about heredity last class, but we're actually going to define heredity this class, okay? So heredity explains why organisms are similar but not identical to their parents, all right? So remember last class we talked a little bit about how there's two parent organisms and sexual cells that come together to make a new organism, right? So heredity will explain why organisms are similar but not identical, like how they are versus asexual cells. Okay. So Blake, can you read for me what heredity is?
Heredity is the passing of genes from one generation to another.
Thank you. So heredity is the passing of genes from one generation to another. All right. So we talked about last class when we talked about DNA and how they have genes in them, or it has different traits. When you pass those traits from one generation to another, that is what heredity is, right? So remember how we were saying some of us have similar traits to our parents, some of the similar traits to our brothers and sisters. Well, that passing, the reason why you all have the same type of traits is because of what is called heredity. Okay, so let's make sure we put heredity under our vocabulary. So we talked a little bit about what a trait is. And a trait is the individual expression of a feature. So while heredity is the passing of genes from one generation to another, the genes that are actually passed are traits. And those traits are individual expressions of a feature. I hit a thumbs up when everybody has that note and is ready to move on. Love how Zamari's writing her notes down. Najee, you got these notes, sir? Good job. Marcus, you got those notes down? Kennedy, you got these notes down? Great job. A few of our friends who still have our cameras off, let's make sure we get those cameras on, please. So, how are these traits passed? All right, I want you to think to yourself, how are these traits passed? And if we know that genes are found in DNA, how is that DNA compacted, right? So how do these genes, how are they in the DNA and how do they get passed? Just think about that for a second. Because we're gonna later answer that question as we move throughout today's class. So the way that these traits are passed and the way that where these traits are held are inside chromosomes, right? So a chromosome is a structure made of DNA that transfers genetic information to the next generation. So we have different chromosomes that are passed, and when those chromosomes are passed through sexual reproduction, that is how you get the traits that you have, and that's how we are able to see heredity. So heredity is the passing of genes from one generation to another. What we are passing in those genes are we are passing traits. And these traits are passed through chromosomes. So each parent cell has chromosomes, and when they come together to reproduce, they pass their chromosomes to they pass the chromosome to their offspring, to their new organism. Everybody good? Clear, you got these down? All right, so we're going back to asexual versus sexual reproduction. We're going to go over that again to make sure that we are clear on what the difference is between the two, okay? So we remember that asexual reproduction is when what? Who can remind me what asexual reproduction is? Guys, Martin, do you remember what asexual reproduction is?
I'm about to go back to my notes.
Okay, thank you. I love that. So, Kalia, I like your answer, but that's actually sexual reproduction. So, asexual reproduction is when a single organism makes a new organism by itself, right? So, it makes a copy cell by itself without the help of another parent cell. So, if it's making a copy, what percent of its DNA is being transferred, right? If it's making an exact copy, how much of the DNA is being transferred from a parent cell to an offspring? Is it 50%? Is it 100%? 25%? If it's going, thank you, Kalia. So 100%, right? So 100% of the DNA is being transferred from an asexual or from one in asexual reproduction. The parent organism is transferring 100% of its DNA because there's no other DNA to mix it with, right? So it's going from it's making an exact copy or an exact replica. So if that's the case in asexual reproduction, how much DNA in percent is being transferred from a parent offspring in sexual reproduction? Yeah, let me know in the chat. What do you think? What percent of the DNA is being transferred from a parent offspring in sexual reproduction, right? So sexual reproduction is when two parents reproduce. What percent is being transferred from them? So I see a response from Kalia,